भास्वानुदेति विकचानि सरोरुहाणि सम्पूरयन्ति निनदैः ककुभो विहङ्गाः श्रीवैष्णवाः सततमर्थितमङ्गलास्ते धामाश्रयन्ति तव वेङ्कटसुप्रभातम् ब्रह्मादयः सुरवराः समहर्षयस्ते सन्तः सनन्दनमुखस्त्वथ योगिवर्याः धामान्तिके तव हि मङ्गलवस्तु हस्ताः श्रीवेङ्कटाचलपते तव सुप्रभातम्.
भास्वानुदेति विकचानि सरोरुहाणि. भास्वा अनुदेति, anu udeti, bhaswana udeti. So this means the rising sun. Bhaswan udeti vikachani saroruhani. Vikachani means the blossomed. Vikasita comes from the word vikasita. Vikachani saroruhani. Saroruhani is lotus. Saroruha. Saroruha means that which comes up from the saras or the river, that which blossoms, that which aruha from the or it comes out from the river is saroruha, and that is a lotus, right? So the morning sun is up there and the lotus have blossomed. Sampurayanti ninadai kakubho vihangaha. So vihangaha means birds. Vihangaha means bird. Vihangaha, birds. Kakubho. Kakubho means in one reference, Kakubho means mountain. Let me just check that word. Kakubho. Kakubha. Okay. Kakubha means the summit or the peak of a mountain. So Kakubha is a mountain. And Vihanga means bird. So Kakubho Vihanga means the mountain birds. The birds that hover around the mountains or they fly high, like the eagles, etc. There are only very few birds that fly high, right? They have filled Sampurayanti. Purayanti Ninadaihi. Ninadai means with their sound, nada. With their nada, they have filled the air. Sampurayanti Ninadaihi Kakubho Vihanga. The Kakubho Vihanga, which means the mountain birds, have filled the air with their sounds. Shri Vaishnava Satatam Arthita Mangalaste. Shri Vaishnava Satatam Arthita Mangalaste means Shri Vaishnava Satatam. So a true Shri Vaishnava constantly desires to be in your presence. Satatam Arthitam Arthita Mangalaste. Mangalaha te, which means they want to be in your Mangala presence. Satatam, all the time. He means to be Arthitam, Arthita. Satatam Arthita. He means to always be in your divine presence. Who? Shri Vaishnava. One who is a Shri Vaishnava. Dhama Shrayanti Tava Venkata Suprabhatam. Dhama Shrayanti means I take refuge in your Dhama, in your abode. Dhama Ashrayanti. So, who I take or they take? Ashrayanti. It is the third person. So, Ashrayan, third person plural. Ashrayanti Tava Venkata Suprabhatam. So, these Shri Vaishnavas who are ever wanting to be in your presence, they have taken complete refuge or surrender in your abode. Dhama means abode. Okay. So now, just a few things here. The so the what is the visualization that Anna is giving us here is Bhasvanu Deti Pikachani Saroruhani. So there's always this relationship between the Surya and the lotus, because the lotus always blossoms the moment the sun rays fall on it, right? So there is the Saroruha have blossomed, which means the Surya is already out there. The Surya Bhagavan is already risen, and Sampurayanti Ninadaihi Kakubho Vihanga. So these birds have started circling. Usually birds don't circle around at night, right? They usually wait till the sunrise to circle around and try to look for prey, etc. Unless they're owls, right? Owls prey at night. But generally the birds that uh, fly around high, or the like the eagles, falcons, and all of these birds, I think they generally start circling around or going around in the mornings after the sun rises. So this is also an indication that the sun has risen, right? And they're filling the air with their sounds. They're making their sounds. And then the third one is Sri Vaishnava Satatam Arthita Mangalaste. One who's a Sri Vaishnava, he is forever at your um, Sri Vaishnava Satatam Arthita. He means to only serve you. So he takes his purpose as serving you. Kainkaryam is his only purpose of his life. And this is a very powerful idea for Sri Vaishnavas. Okay. We've discussed this before also. In the Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya, the desire to serve Narayana and no one else. Okay. This is also important. To serve Narayana and his devotees and no one else. Because there is a there is, beings surrendering is important, but who do you surrender to is also very important. Correct. You can also surrender to someone who is offering you riches, wealth, name, fame. You can also surrender to such a person. So when we say Sharanagati or being a prapanna, prapatti, it is the object of surrender becomes an important aspect to be brought into consideration. We can't just say that, okay, so because it is said surrender, I will surrender. Now, of course, there are different, in different faiths and followings, there is this idea of surrender. For example, in the Shaiva Agama, there's one, like how in Vaishnavas there are Arvars. In the Shaiva following, there are Nayanmars. And Nayanmars, there's one Nayanmar whose name is one of the Nalvar. He was a small boy and
Sundarar.
giving milk.
Tirunjana Sambandar.
Sorry, the Tirunayana Sambandar.
Tirunjana Sambandar is known to be, he considered himself as a prapanna, or somebody who's surrendered himself to Shiva, to Lord Shiva. So in his works, you will notice a lot of references made to surrendering. Now, when we do surrender and when we say this is the object of my surrender, there are various ways in which one can surrender, right? One surrenders. So, for example, a dasa or a servant will surrender his physical abilities to the Lord. his physical abilities, which means I am capable of certain things, I have certain talents, and I'm capable of certain things. I offer this at your service, which means you can use these talents of mine at your disposal. It is at your disposal, and you can use it at your discretion. Right? That is one level of surrender. The other level of surrender is I also surrender my well being to you, which means if there is any need for money, I need to take care of my family, I need to take care of my kids and all of that, and if I'm struggling, you will take care of it. So I also surrender that, because why? Because I know in the first step, I have surrendered my skills and abilities to you, and hence now I also surrender my attempt to well-being to you in the hope that you will take care of me, right? So I surrender that. Then there is another level of surrender where I surrender my emotions, my fears, my anxieties, my all of that also I surrender. Now, in human relationships, even if it is a master and a servant, there is the level of surrender is only to a certain extent, right? Because it's transactional to a large extent. But then when it goes to an acharya or a guru or a teacher, the level of surrender or that becomes a little more involved. There is greater involvement of the acharya or the guru into the life of the dasa or the servant, the disciple, student, whoever it is. There's a little more because uh, the guru or the acharya will look out for the disciple in even in those areas where he himself hasn't looked out for himself, right? So that is a that so that is no more that kind of a transaction. It becomes a little more involved engagement. Then the next level of dasatvam or the surrender is to the Lord himself. In this case, the surrender is complete. It is complete because there the understanding is set in that this master who I'm surrendering to is the creator of me. He is the sustainer of me. He will be the destroyer of me too, which means he is the maker, sustainer, and the destroyer of me. And hence, with that understanding, with the deep understanding, I completely surrender. Okay. Now, this, when somebody surrenders oneself like this, then there are a few things. There is one Alvar called Ananta Alvar. Ananta Alvar was a disciple of Ramanuja. Okay. So he gives 4 marks of a Vaishnava. 4 marks. Somebody comes and asks him, what are the marks or what you call as insignia or the when I look at somebody, how do I know he's a true Sri Vaishnava? He says 4 things. Tamil சொல்றார் அவர். He says 4 things. கொக்கு போல் இருப்பான், கோழி போல் இருப்பான், உப்பு போல் இருப்பான், உம்மை போல் இருப்பான். So he says these 4 things. Look at what it is. But before that, Anantalvar has an interesting connection to Venkatachalapati, Venkateswara. Sri Ramanuja had asked Anantalvar to build a garden in Tirumala and offer flowers from there to Venkateswara. So he had built a garden and he was taking a lot of care. He and his wife would manage the garden. And there was a point when on a certain day, what happens is Venkateswara decides to do a leela. So he comes as a small boy, and uh, Anantarvar's wife is pregnant, and she is struggling trying to attend the garden and take flowers and all of that. And this little boy in an aspect to come and help her is coming and helping her out. Now, Anantarvar is very, very protective of this garden because Ramanuja, his guru, has asked him to take care of this garden and offer flowers from here to Bhagavan. He doesn't allow anybody else. So he's very kind of uh, very territorial about his garden. But this little boy comes there, and Anantarvar is very upset, or upset rather, he is angry. Who's this little boy meddling in my garden? He takes a crowbar. Crowbar is that long rod, iron rod. You usually used to
Gadapara.
Gadapara. Usually used to dig into the soil and all that, right? So he takes that Gadapara, he has it in the garden, and then he hits the little boy out of anger. And the little boy starts bleeding. And then later he realizes that this is Venkateswara come to just to test him or do a leela. And then he falls at his feet and then seeks forgiveness and all of that. And the story goes that he quickly brings camphor, Pachakalpuram, and keeps it. So essentially the place where he gets hurt is this chin area. With the Gadapara, when he hits the little boy, he gets hurt and starts bleeding. Brings Pachakalpuram and keeps it here. And this is the Pachakalpuram that we see even today in Venkateswara's Mukham.
Yeah, they say that the idol has a cut in that place. Yeah,
Cut
they yeah, they say
possibly there
that.
is a cut also that is there.
Yeah, so the way it goes is he goes to the Sanctum Sanctorum and sees the idol bleeding.
Ah,
That's how
that
he
is
realizes.
okay. Right. Right. And then he realizes the little boy is Venkateswara.
Correct. Yeah.
He's hit the little boy and the idol is bleeding. He realizes it's him who's come. So then he goes, rushes and applies this Pachakalpam, which is there even today. So this is the story of Anantarvar, who describes who is a true Vaishnava. Okay, so a devotee comes and asks him who is a true Vaishnava. He says, Kokku pol iruppan, Koli pol iruppan, Uppu pol iruppan, Ummai pol iruppan. So Kokku is a crane. Okay. So what is the quality of a crane? It will stand, wait till it gets its prey. And it will wait indefinitely till it gets its prey. We've seen cranes stand on one leg. Why does it stand on one leg? Is because it conserves energy so that it can keep switching legs. It can stand longer. You can stand longer when you are able to. We can't. I mean, we have not trained ourselves that way, but it stands on one leg so that the other leg is rested. And then when this leg is tired, it will put this leg down and then flip the other leg up so that the other leg gets rest. So it can actually stand for very long. So Kokku pole iruppan. So a Sri Vaishnava, a true Sri Vaishnava will wait for the grace of the Lord. So there is no urgency. He will not display a sense of anxiety. He will wait for like Nandi. We have discussed about Garuda and Nandi and all of that, right? So like Nandi, just wait. Then Kori pole iruppan. So Kori, the description of a Kori is it pulls out worms, small worms, earthworms, and other kinds of worms amidst a heap of garbage. So there can be a lot of garbage, but still it will know what to pick out from that. Again, the other example is of a Paramahamsa, the mythical bird, the Hamsa. It can take out milk from a mixture of milk and water. It can just suck out milk alone. So like that, a Kori has this ability to take out only the food that it wants. So it will take out the essence of what is required, what it requires. So Kori pol irpan means he'll be like a true Sri Vaishnava, will be like a Kori, will be like a cock or a hen which knows how to take out that which is required from this whole mess of a world that we have, right? Whatever that we see as this whole world of confusion and conflict and disturbances and all that, he'll know how to pull out the essence from that. Kori pol irpan. And uppu pol irpan. Uppu means salt, which when dissolves into water, the presence of salt is not seen but felt. So a true Vaishnava will be that way, one who is able to not necessarily, so one, he will kind of be part of whatever that is there, or in the presence of Bhagavan, he will, his Kainkaryam will be such that he will not be called out separately. He will not be, he would not require the claim and the credit, but his effect will be seen. So uppu pole irpan. And now the devotee is asking Anantalvar. So he will say that ummai pol irpan. Ummai pol irpan means a true Vaishnava will be like you, like a true devotee who's wanting to know who a true Vaishnava is and wanting to follow the path of that. And also ummai pol irpan means he'll be just one amongst you. அவனை அப்படி தனியா வித்தியாசம் கண்டுபிடிக்க முடியாது. He will just merge amongst everybody, because remember, the whole premises of Sharanagati, the premises of humility. So you develop humility to the extent that you don't stand out separately anywhere. Maybe your presence is felt like the uppu is felt in the water, mixed up with the water. But he will not make others feel uncomfortable. And this is also an important aspect of a sannyasi. One of the important vows or a sannyasi has to take is of abhaya. Abhaya means fearlessness. Fearlessness is not that I will not be afraid. A sannyasi or a swami's fearlessness is, in my presence others should not feel fear. So a true Vaishnava is also in that sense. In his presence, others should not feel judged, intimidated, right? We should not show our superiority, which sadly a lot of Vaishnavites do today. But this is the, and when you say true Vaishnava, it doesn't necessarily, it's not a community or a group, right? The reason I'm mentioning these qualities are, these are just qualities. Anybody who's got developed these qualities of bhakti, of a sense of Sharanagati, is a Vaishnava. And that is why in even in this thing, you see Alvars, there are 2-3 Alvars who are Shudras. Tirupan Alvar is a Shudra. His name was Pana, Tirupan Alvar. He was a Shudra. He was singing the name of Narayana in Ranganatha around Srirangam. And then without his knowledge, he was blocking the way of a Brahmin priest. And the Brahmin got really wild and then hit him, and then Tirupan Alvar started bleeding. And his name was Pana. So he profusely apologized and went and sat in one corner, saying that I'm really sorry. I was so immersed in the name or singing about Bhagavan, I completely forgot my station in life, or my status in society. Eventually, he goes and goes to one corner. This priest then goes to Ranganatha Kovil, Srirangam. While he's going, his eyes start becoming blind, and the temple doors are not opening to him. And then he realizes the mistake he has done. He has insulted a true devotee. And then he comes and apologizes to Pana, saying that you are a much greater devotee than me, right? Doesn't matter what caste you belong to. So it's not a community. So it's eventually become one, unfortunately. But anyone who develops these qualities, kokku pol iruppan, koli pol iruppan, uppu pol iruppan, ummai pol iruppan. All of these qualities, one who develops, Anantarvar says, is a Vaishnava. Doesn't matter what caste, creed, gender, class, community you belong to, right? So this is Sri Vaishnava Satatam Arthita Mangalaste. The other thing I just wanted to share in terms of this, I think we did discuss this briefly during the Panchadwaraka Yatra, and just want to point out, see, there are Pancha Samskaras again for a Vaishnava. So when you call somebody as a Sri Vaishnava, there are Pancha Samskaras that happen. First one is called Tapam, Pundram, Mantropadesham, Namakaranam, Yajnam. Okay. Tapam is those who have had friends who are Iyengars, அந்த சூடு போடுறதுன்னு ஒரு இது உண்டு. ஆச்சாரியன் கிட்ட போய் சூடு போடுறது. So that சூடு போடுறது is essentially the Acharyan will take a Sangha and a Chakram, two small this thing, the symbols, and iron rod, and they will put it as a symbol on the around the shoulder area, and this process is called Samashayanam. Okay, and this is done, it was done for a different, the actual act of doing this was a reason why, because at that time there was Muslim invasion, and then there was a lot of harm inflicted on Vaishnavas, particularly Ramanuja, which is why Ramanuja had to flee from Tamil Nadu and go to Karnataka, etc. But a lot of harm was inflicted on Vaishnavas, and they had to identify a Vaishnava body after it dies. The karma kriya pandrathukaga, they wanted to know, make sure that the body is identified so that the kriya karma is done properly. So that is one of the reasons, was this, to put the do this. But this is done as part of your submission to the Acharya. So one somebody goes to an Acharya saying, I want to become a Vaishnava, and he says, okay, I accept you. And again, anybody can become a Sri Vaishnava that way, right? But you submit yourself to the Acharya and Bhagavan and so on and so forth. So the tapam that you put here is a physical act. And the reference that is made is to Taittiriya Aranyakam, where it says, Atapta tanuhu na tad dhama ashnute. That body, tanuhu, that body, which has not been atapta, which has not been subject to tapa, which has not been subject to fire, does not, na tat dhama ashnute, it does not attain to the Lord's abode. You understand what it says? This is Taittiriya Aranyakam says, the body, that which has not been subject to the fire or fire, does not attain to the abode of the Lord. The interpretation that has been made is that you do this Samashayanam, which means you put this the symbols of Shankha Chakram. But the deeper meaning, Taittiriya Aranyakam, obviously because it is a Vedic phrase, it means that person who has not gone through the process of tapas cannot attain to the Lord. Unless you do some kind of tapas, sadhana, intense sadhana, one cannot attain to. And that sadhana could be through your daily spiritual practices, through the sankirtana that you do, through bhajans that you do, the kainkaryam that you do, whatever that you do whatever in the attempt of dissolving oneself into the Lord. Those actions, those sadhanas, those practices that you do, in essence, to essentially understand your universal nature, your divine nature, which means you are dissolving your individuality into the cosmic presence that is there. This process will happen through the process of tapasya. And hence, The Taittiriya Aranyakam says that one who does not do this, it's not easy to attain to the Lord. It's not easy to understand what it is. Brahman ennanu purinjikarada, to understand what is Brahman, to understand what is Satchidananda. All of this cannot be understood just by reading, just by listening. It has to be an intense practice. It has to be intense sadhana. So that is what this means. So tapam. Pundram are the mark of Narayana on 12 places of the body. So the Thiruman and the Sri Churnam. The Thiruman are the white color Thiruman and the Sri Churnam, the red color Sri Churnam. These you apply on 12 parts of the body. These are 12 vital parts of the body. And those who do Sandhya Vandanam also know after the Achamaniyam, we touch those 12 parts, right? Keshavaya Nama, Narayana Nama, Madhavaya Nama, Govinda Nama, and so on and so forth. So the 12 parts that we touch. So these are 12 parts where you go and position these namas. Tiruman. Because you are telling that see, it's like this. In those olden days, when slaves used to be sold in the marketplace, how do you recognize a slave is your slave? How does one recognize a slave as my slave? ஏதாவது ஒரு முத்திரை குத்திடுவா. மாட்டுக்கெல்லாம் பண்ணுவா தெரியுமா? They'll do it for cows and horses and all of that. They put some kind of a mark on the animal to indicate that it's my animal. In the same way, even in the Roman society, they used to do this. A lot of these societies where they used to have the slave trade go on, they would mark something on the slave to indicate that this slave belongs to this house. Every house will have a symbol. Here, what the devotee is saying is, I am the slave of the Lord. So hence I am carrying his symbol all over my body. This was the idea. Pundram. Mantropadesham. So there are mantras, Ashtaksharam, Dvayam, Charma Shlokam, etc. These are mantras that are taught and they chant. Then Namakaranam. Namakaranam is whatever name we have, we will have. But Namakaranam is to offer you a name. Essentially, you will have the same name, but then you will start referring to yourself as Adiyen or Dasan. Ramanuja Dasan. We will refer to ourselves as Ramanuja Dasan or Adiyen, which means I am a servant, I am a Dasa. And the fifth one is Yagyam. Yagyam means Tirvaradhanam, which means every day your Nityanusandhanam. Whatever you do on a daily basis, the rituals that you do to your Aradhya Devatas that you have at home, right? So these are what is known as the Pancha Samskaras. Right? So this is again another way of referring to somebody who's a Sri Vaishnava. Now, Sri, again, it does not necessarily refer to a community. It has become so, but it need not be so. Anybody who is doing, he doesn't have to carry the 12 marks on his body. But as long as he belongs, he thinks in his mind, he belongs to the Lord. He believes truly that this body is the Creator's property. I did not create this body, right? It's very clear. There is no two ways about it. If somebody tells that I created this body, is ignorant, completely ignorant, right? There's no way he can prove saying I created this body. Unless you are like Agastya Muni, who created Lopa Mudra from a part of his body. But otherwise, for all of us, we can't say I created this. There's somebody else who created this body. So the one who creates is the owner. So we are giving back the ownership. So again, I'm reminded of this Kabir's Doha. What is that? जो मेरा मुझ में कुछ नहीं, जो कुछ है सो तेरा, तेरा तुझको सौंप दूं, क्या लागे है मेरा. मेरा मुझ में कुछ नहीं. There is nothing of mine in me. जो कुछ है सो तेरा. Whatever is there is yours. तेरा तुझको सौंप दूं. I am offering you your own thing. Tera, it is your thing. I am offering you. Tera tujhko saunp दूं. I am offering it to you. What? I am offering your own possession, your property to you. क्या लागे है मेरा? What does it matter to me? எனக்கு என்ன குறைஞ்சு போச்சு? இங்க இருக்கிறது எல்லாமே உன்னோடது. Whatever is here is yours. And when I give yours back to you, how does it affect me? It is a profound state of Sharanagati. So he's a Sri Vaishnava, right? Kabir was a weaver sitting in Varanasi. Was he in Varanasi? Yeah, Varanasi.
Yes.
Varanasi, right? Yeah. So he was a weaver, but he was a true Sri Vaishnava because somebody was able to say this. So this is what it is. I don't have to carry a pundram. He wasn't carrying pundram, the Tiruman and Sri Churnam on his body. But still he truly believed that this is his property. Kya lage hai mera? What is it for me? What is it in it for me? And then likewise, the other two, the mantropadesham. So those of you chant Narayana, Om Namo Narayana, although it is given during the Samashranam process of the Panchasanskara process, the Om Namo Narayana is given by the Acharya. Ramanujacharya himself went on to the rooftop and gave it to the whole world. Right? Of course, the world at that time was a small village that he was in, but the story spread out into the world, right? So now everybody knows that Om Namo Narayana is an Ashtaksharam, which is a very a Divya Ashtaksharam, a Divya Mantra, which has been given out. The intent of Sri Ramanuja was that everybody receives it without any need for any screening process. Everybody receives it freely. So you get the mantra over there. So those who chant Om Namo Narayana with this feeling, with this understanding, and with this bhavana is a Sri Vaishnava. Okay. So that is this particular verse that Anna is speaking about. Bhasvanudeti vikachani saroruhani sampurayanti ninadaih kakubho vihangaha. So the morning sun is up and all the beautiful birds are circling around, the mountain birds are circling around. Shri Vaishnava Satatam Arthita Mangalaste. The Vaishnavas, true Sri Vaishnavas, are waiting in your abode, standing there to be in your presence. Dhama Ashrayanti Tava Venkata Suprabhatam. They are there waiting at your abode. They are seeking refuge in your abode. Tava Venkata Suprabhatam. O Venkateswara, may it be a glorious morning to you and to all of us. So that is this particular verse.
குருஜி இந்த சரண்டருக்கு வந்து one of the foremost prerequisites, either surrender to Guru or surrender to Bhagavan or surrender to anybody, isn't it the thought of I and desire? Don't those two prerequisites to be dropped first before, even before proceed?
Correct. What happens is it is an iterative process. The dropping of desire will not happen over a day because the accumulation of desire has happened over millions of years or millions of lifetimes. So the dropping of the desire may not happen over a day. Because
okay, desire dropping illam irkalam, but வந்து the thought that I will get something in return. நான் சரண்டர் ஆனா எனக்கு ரிட்டர்ன்ல வரும் அப்படிங்கறது அதை டிராப் பண்ணணும் இல்லையா ஃபர்ஸ்ட்? அதான் நான் சொல்ல வரேன்.
Absolutely. So Sharanagati, absolutely right, ma'am. Sharanagati is not with the desire of getting something in return except his grace, except his karuna, his grace. But then the grace in our mind, the problem is we translate or we interpret that grace as something material that we need. The problem of grace is our interpretation of grace is not whatever he gives me. If I get comforts, then he has graced me. If I am getting peace of mind, then he has graced me. If I am getting everything is settled around me, then he has graced me. If there is disturbance, then he has not graced me. If there is conflict and struggle, then he has not graced me. This is the interpretation of grace that we carry. When I say we surrender expecting nothing except grace, is grace whatever he gives. It could come in the form
Correct.
of
Adada, see.
correct. சொல்லுங்க மாமா.
Expectation, not even expecting that he will grace me. I have to just surrender and I leave everything and I surrender. There cannot be 25% surrender ஆயிட்டேன் அப்புறம் 50% surrender. 100% surrender.
True.
Yeah.
True. Absolutely. And when so surrender, like it cannot be a part-time activity, nor can it be a partial activity. So when there is this sense of surrender, it cannot be part-time means, okay, today for these activities I surrender to you, and for these activities I am going to take care of myself. இந்த பாகப்பிரவனை பண்ணி அப்படி பண்றது, it's not that way. Rightly pointed out, Mama. And then the other thing is also, when I say you accept his grace, it is extremely a very high state of mind where one is able to surrender truly just for the act of surrender. Why are you surrendering? Because that's the only thing I know of. And then you logically work it out in your mind, saying there is nothing better to do than surrender, because I know there is nothing else makes sense. So what you have done is, through the process of logical evaluation, you figured out that doing anything else is meaningless. Like you're looking at the Bhagavad Gita, it is saying at a scale of time, so many yugas, chatur yugas, etc., anything that you do is it's meaningless. Even Adi Shankara, he has done something, Ramanuja has done great things. We are talking about it today, but for them, they didn't attain that level of popularity, fame, and glory, and all of that at the time they lived. For them, they did what they had to do just because there was nothing else to do. I'm saying nothing else to do now, they felt nothing else was meaningful to do. Only thing to do was offer yourself in service, offer yourself in Kainkaryam, offer yourself in surrender, and anything else that needs to happen will happen. So it's a very refined state of mind, where one comes to a state or of realization or understanding that the desire of, so you start with the desire to surrender, because you surrender so that you know, okay, then Bhagavan will be happy, he will grace me, he'll, all of that. I'm making Bhagavan happy. But like you're saying, after a certain point, the refinement is at such a level that you don't need a reason to surrender. So surrender becomes complete in that aspect. It's like saying there is no reason to be joyful. You just have to be joyful because that is your nature. So in that way, your nature is to be of a dasa, of somebody who's surrendered, because you've come to a complete understanding within that there is no other way to be. Everything else is just created up, psychological, mental, created up stuff. Only way to be is to be surrendered, because you are not the creator, you are not the maintainer, you are not the destroyer, you don't run these things. You just have to be surrendered to the processes of life.
Whether taking sannyasa is an act of surrender?
Taking sannyasa is an external act of surrender. It is an external act. Like we said, samyak nyasaha, which means you're establishing yourself in that truth and you're surrendering yourself to that truth. So the truth becomes the primary, the main presence is of truth, not of you, not your mind, not your psychological nonsense that keeps going in our mind, right? That is not doesn't take the dominance. Truth takes dominance. So nyasa is to establish. Nyasa is to establish where in samatvam within yourself, samyak, or in a well established way. These nyasas, you do this nyasa to establish yourself in that, and that is what is sannyasa. And during the process of sannyasa, you're doing this in an external manner because you're telling the world that I've taken sannyasa. See, why is sannyasa required as an activity or as a process outside? Is to tell the world, rest of the people, that I've taken this. Otherwise, people will continue to engage with me in the same way. Adhukaga we show the world that I've taken this. But otherwise, so many people who are in a state of sannyasa within themselves, not necessarily having done the ceremony of sannyasa. Right? So all of this we're talking about is a Sri Vaishnava, the surrender. When we go into that state, then there is complete resolution within oneself.
The surrender kuda is a form of bhakti, Elio. Yeah.
Surrender is a form of bhakti.
Is it
It's a very refined form of bhakti.
I mean,
Cholama.
So our
See, bhakti can lead one to a state of surrender, because bhakti, you have an object of devotion. You have an object of devotion and you devote yourself to that object. It could be Bhagavan, it could be Acharya, it could be Guru. And you start with developing bhakti. And then after a certain point, it just becomes your nature. Then you are not devoted to something, you are just devoted. It's a very different state. That's why I'm saying it is a slightly refined state, right? Like you mentioned, there is no particular desire there. Why are you devoted? Who are you devoted? I am in a state of devotion. And that state of devotion essentially is not, you're just devoted to life in a very profound way. There is no conflict. In devotion, you're not devoted to, I am devoted to Shiva and not to Vishnu. I'm devoted to Muruga and not to Ganesha. No, it's not. The objectifying of devotion is gone. You may find the same peace and joy if you sit on a mountaintop or on an ocean or in a temple or in a park, because that filled with that joy inside and devotion inside. So a lot of things are required in terms of our ability to connect to these spiritual ideas, but the Mahans or the Mahatmas that we talk about have kind of transcended that also, because for them they don't need a tool. They don't need a tool or a reason or a subject or something to be in that state. That has become their nature. Like how we are, my nature is to be a human being, a man, a householder, whatever. It is my nature. Paal pongidana, I have to get up and I'll go and switch it off. Giving an example, of course. I don't do that because I don't know when it pongar. But I'm saying this is our nature. This I engage. But in the same way, the mind is constantly consumed and subsumed by the thought of Bhagavan. Imagine the state of mind it will be. It will be forever devoted. It will see Bhagavan everywhere. It will see in every person, every incident, every event, everything that comes, goes. Every kokku you will see Bhagavan. You will see, it becomes a very different engagement with the world. Right? So that is where bhakti then becomes, there is no difference between the prapanna and the object of devotion and the devotee himself. This very close, intimate relationship.
Right. Thank you.
Om Shri Akantaya Kalyana Nidearthinam Shri Venkateswara Srinivasaya Mangalam Kayena Vacha Manasendriyarva Buddhyatmana Va Prakrite Swabhavat Karomi Yatyat Sakalam Parasmai Narayanayati Samarpayami सदाशिवाय इति समर्पयामि, जगदम्बिकायै इति समर्पयामि, सद्गुरुनाथाय इति। हरि ओम तत्सद्गुरुभ्यो नमः।